Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today I've got another time-lapse video of painting Mortal Gods by Footsore Miniatures. Absolutely fantastic game, fantastic minis, all by Victrix. I've used quite a few contrast paint and some Army Painter inks as well for this one, and they've turned out really well. But as always, let's get the kettle on before we get started. Okay, so the first step with these, once they were all built and painted, I put some gravel on the bases just to cover them, and I gave them all a base coat of Wraithbone by Citadel Miniatures. It's a new one, I say fairly new one now, for use with the contrast paints. And then I made a start on the actual models themselves. Now you can see on this one I have sped it up, a bit of a time-lapse video again, just so you can see the effect it has. But essentially, first paint we went with was the contrast paint Gulliman Flesh. I did this throughout all the miniatures, just went through the whole lot, completely coating all the skin areas essentially, because they're all going to be exactly the same no matter what whether you're going Spartans or Athenians or any of the Greek states. They were all essentially painted with the Gulliman Flesh because it was a nice easy one to start with. I then jumped ahead a little bit. I went straight into contrast paint again, which was the Blood Angels Red, just on the Spartans, because I really wanted to get onto them, see how the contrast paint worked, whether it was what I really wanted to do with the rest of the minis. So essentially I painted all the cloth areas of the undershirt, and then just went slightly around the actual armour itself, picking out some small details. And I was a little bit worried that the contrast paint wouldn't work for this because of the nature of it being a lot more runny. We're just going to drop into the recesses, but it worked really well. Really picked out the details well as well, that I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, the contrast paint for the Spartans is perfect for the Blood Angels Red anyway. I then moved on to the rest of the minis and used a few Army Painter inks and things to see the difference, and I'll show you those now. So instead of showing you a video of me actually painting these, I thought the best thing to do would be to point out where the differences were in the models. Obviously on the left there you've got the Citadel Miniatures, Citadel Colour Even Contrast Blood Angels Red on the actual Spartan minis. I then used the yellow one as well. It's the Yandan Yellow, which I was a little bit worried about using to start with, but I think it turned out really well, as you can see from the pictures here. I then moved on to the Army Painter range, just to essentially because I just wanted to try something different to see what they look like. The first one was the mid brown, and which turned out really well. I then moved on to a light tone and strong tone. I also used the blue tone military shader, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, and the purple tone as well. Now, these went down really well, and they're so quick and easy to get through. They could throw them down onto the minis, and they look really good at the end of it. Okay, so the next step we then went on to was detailing. So the first thing I did was pick up Corvus Black. It's like it's not quite a really dark black. It's like a grey, very dark grey, almost like a black that is slightly lighter. It's quite hard to explain. But to use this, I went mainly on the Spartans. I used it for the spears to make it look darker. I wanted it to stand out a lot more than the browns of the Athenians, which we'll come on to. I also used it on some of the armor plating that they had, so it made it look like a black leather armor. So again, make that red stand out really nicely. Just needed to go over that a couple of times as well with the Corvus Black, because you can sort of see the white through it if you don't do that. The next step was Scorched Brown. It's an older Citadel Miniatures colour I've got, and I use this for sort of the leather work around the belt sort of areas. I also used it on the Athenian as well, just on his boots and the back of the shield as well, just to make it look a little bit more wooden. I wanted them to look a little bit poorer, really, and having to use a lot of leathers rather than a lot of metals like the Spartans. The next step was then Rhinox hide. This was mainly to pick out the belts and things. But one thing that I did start with was the Athenians making these like throwing spear, brown rather than black, just to make that stand out, make it a bit different. And I also used it on the scabbard and belts as well. Any sort of darker leather areas I thought about going to around the Spartan's wrist where his shield would connect as well, just because you may see that behind the shield itself and around the strapping on the actual spear itself. And it looked really good. I thought it went really well. Any of you who watched my previous videos will know I use Rhinox hide a lot. I then used Mornfang brown, which is a lot lighter brown, just on the shield as well for the Athenian, so it was again a little bit of a different colour there. And I also used Mornfang brown on the strapping, just around the Spartan warrior as well, so it stood out a lot more from the leather parts around his belt areas. I then used lead belch, which is always my go-to for any sort of metal work on minis. Lead belch is nice, easy paint, really good to go down. Looks great when null oil is applied as well. Really makes it look like a real metal. I also used it around the shield for the Athenian as well, and then picked out a couple of other little metal pieces on the minis, as you'll see in the final shots when we're done in a moment, around the sword as well, just on the Spartan there. Quite a big job now was the Retributor armor base. This is a really bright gold that I picked up a long time ago, but I really wanted the gold to stand out a lot from the Spartans. I was a little bit worried when I actually put this down because it was very bright, but I brought that colour back down with using null oil, and it did work really well. That step did, and the gold actually looks really good. So I do recommend going for the Retributor armor or any other bright golds rather than going quite dull, because they tend to wash out completely and don't look as bright anymore when you use anything that's darker. The next step was null oil. I've got a few comparison shots with you why I use null oil on this. One thing I did was cover the armor itself in null oil, and this really brought that white down. And I was a bit worried about doing it. I thought I'd have to bring the white back up, but you can see the comparison there on the right hand side is what null oil has been applied to. But it worked really well. It made it look a little bit more dull. Also, I used it around the bottom of the plumes around the helmets, and you can see it then makes it look brighter as it gets to the edge. It gives you that really nice effect. You'll probably not notice when it's on the tabletop, but I know it's there, and you'll know it's there, and you'll get that great feeling once it's done. The next step was then basing. Essentially, we'd already put the basing material down, which I just used a smooth sand that I'd picked up, and I used Xandra dust just to cake that, really, just to give it a covering on the bottom. I always used to like to paint the bases rather than just use a material on the base, because then it all looks the same and it all blends in nicely together. To just bring that up a little bit, I did use a shabty bone just to dry brush over the base, and it just makes a few areas and the raised areas stand up nicely, and they look really good. And that's essentially the minis done. They're completed. The one bit I didn't show you was the shields, and that's because there's so many different ways of doing shields out there. There's loads you can pick up. Transfers you can go for. There's some metal shields out there. You can see the Spartans on the right hand side. They've got like a raised area on the shield for that sort of A shape, and they are metal shields. I've also picked up some Athenian ones with the owl on, which look nice, but as you can see, there's a few mixed in there that have used transfers. Essentially just paint it with a gold, give it a brown on the back, and then do what you want with front. You can either put transfers on, you can free paint yourself. I won't do that because I'm no good at doing it that small. It doesn't look very good when I try, but yeah, they look really good when they're finished and really complete the army. I think they look absolutely fantastic in my mind anyway. If you look at the screen there, got a few zoomed in shots now for you, and let's look at the first one, which is the skirmishers. And we've also got some musicians that's at the front there. I went with the red for the one on the left, just so we can go with the Spartans essentially. But as you can see, there's loads of different variety with those, even though the models essentially are the same, because they are all just the Victrix range, and there's not many poses that you can go with. But the colours really do make them look a little bit different to one another. And then you can add the shields and things in as well for the peltas, just so they look slightly different from one another. We've then got the Greeks. There's a lot of variation with the colouring on these models because I wanted them all to look very individual. Historically, a lot of Greek warriors wouldn't wear their own armour. They wouldn't have a uniformed armour, not like in things like Assassin's Creed and stuff where you can see them essentially all having the same. These were very different, and they would wear very different colours to one another. And they'd also, all the shields would be different as well. One thing you will pick up on is there's a couple of metal shields in there. There's the blue Athenian one with the L and a green one with an L as well. I really like that green. Makes it look very much like marble. Makes it stand out really nicely. But what I did do with the blue one, I went I got some more Victrix minis as well, and I got a few Greek soldiers to look like they were state troopers, and then the rest are essentially all your farmers and guys who've made their own armor basically, or bought their own, so they're all very different from one another. Finally, it's the Spartans, which have got to be one of my favourites, and I wanted them to very much look like the guys out of 300. Now, you can't really do that because you'd have to have a lot of bare-chested soldiers, so you have to stick with the armour, but I think the shields all make them look very uniformed indeed, more like a fighting force, which historically they were all pretty much a fighting force in Greece at the time, and I think these look absolutely fantastic. Again, with these, I did get some resin heads in place of the Victrix heads instead for many of the helmeted warriors, just so you've got that uniformity, and I think they look absolutely fantastic. I'm so pleased with how they've turned out, and I can't wait to get them on the tabletop. But there we have it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you like this video. Make sure you comment down below on what you think of the paint schemes we've gone with, and if you've got any other different ways of painting, different ideas that you'd want to go with, stick it down in the comments and we'll have a look and we'll have a chat about those. But really thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to see any future videos, and I'll see you in the next one.